Hey y'all, it's Michelle Pippin with WomenWhoWow.com and BeMichellePippin.com, and I am here to talk with you about something that I get a little bit kind of persnickety about, and I'll tell you why in just a second, but it's really about this whole concept of acting as if, right? And so there's a whole industry out there, the one that I'm a part of actually, but that really encourages people to act as if. So for instance, if you want to be a multimillionaire, then you would act as if you're a multimillionaire today. And I'll tell you the foolishness in that, right? So there's two ways that this actually, I think, always works against us, and one way in that it can work for us. And so here are the two ways that I feel like people most apply the act as if philosophy to their business, and why it's a really costly and foolish thing to do. So the first thing that is that's costly and foolish about this whole acting as if thing is when you apply it to monetary decisions, right? So I hear people saying, oh, you want to live, you want to be a multimillionaire. Well, act as if, like, go buy a multimillionaire's house today, right? And get yourself really diving into debt and really burdening then your business and or your life with the entanglements of debt and living far above your means. And so that's one way that I feel like people can get in trouble with that. The act as if philosophy, I think, is really, really powerful when we use it well. But when we start to get ourselves into massive amounts of debt, we actually, I believe, slow down that process of being able to live where you want to live, eventually. So that's the first way it can be, I think, misapplied. The second way it can be misapplied is when it's leading you to lie to your market, right? To lie to your market, to pretend that you're something that you're not, to pretend you're someplace where you're not. And so, and people use, even good people who would never consider themselves out and out liars, or never consider themselves somebody who's going to go and just lie to people to get business. But they can, get into that with this and justifying it as this, act as if kind of thing. And what happens is they start to pretend and lie to people about where they are or what they're accomplishing or what have you. And so I think as marketers, right, there's a spin we can put on almost anything, right? There's a spin we can put on almost anything. Like for instance, when my first coach, talked to me about 10 timesing my income, and I tell people, I had 10 times my income within 3 months. But I can tell you, I also say this, when he told me, what would it take to 10 times your income? And I said, stop right there, buddy. Just to be clear, 10 timesing my income won't cut it, right? Because my income was so minuscule at that time. And so, and I tell people when I say I had 10 times my income, let me be very clear. It wasn't very impressive to begin with, right? So 10 timesing it, I was still, not where I wanted to be. And so the second way that it can really work against you is when you are using it to deceive people, right? Pretending to people. And that is something that just will always work against your brand. It will always, always come back at you. And so when we're saying act as if, I don't actually use that phrase a whole lot because it is so misapplied in the business world. But the way I use it most effectively really is in the decision making. So as an example, someone, several weeks ago had essentially was considering a business expense, okay? And I apologize because the dog is barking. But anyway, so they were considering an expense, a business expense, and they were concerned about the business expense and whether or not to accept it, whether or not to move forward with it, et cetera, et cetera. And so in that case, and it was a business expense, not like the millionaire house I talked about earlier, but like a business expense in terms of something that was on top of whatever money they brought in. And so the question really became, what is your, what would the 2.0 version of you consider? What would the next level version of you consider? And so for me, when I act as if, it's like, when I am deciding on my most aligned actions for the day, when I'm deciding how I should spend my time or how I should prioritize my day, I don't go out there and buy a, mansion I can't afford, or whatever. I don't go out there and lie to people about where I live or how I live or the money that I make or any of that. But I do, when I'm sitting down and I have to decide how to spend my time, that's when I really act as if. So, would the next level version of me be concerned about XYZ fee? Would the next level version of me be concerned or take the time to fight this situation or that situation or what have you? And so that's where I feel like it's most aligned. It's the best way to use that, is to figure out, like, okay, if I were where I really want to be, then what decision would I make right now? What would be important to me right now? What would be worthy of my time right now? And that has been one of the questions that actually guides my day. It's part of my journaling process every day, because I want to know the best way to move forward in my business, the most aligned way. Every day brings with it new opportunity and new challenges. And so when I sit down to plan for the day, it's like, okay, what would, if I can't decide what is the most aligned, then I'll say, okay, well, what if I was where I really wanted to be, right? What would I be doing then? What choice would I make then? And then I make that choice today. Because here's what I found. If we can align our actions, like if you look around and you see people who are where you want to be, they're achieving the level of success that you want to achieve, they are living the way you want to live, they have their priorities the way you want your priorities, then if you want to live like them or earn like them or do business like them, you need to align your actions with their actions. And so when I look forward, the truth is I don't see a lot of women entrepreneurs doing business the way I do business, or certainly not the way I'm aiming to do business. And so, I don't really look to a certain role model per se, but I do know who I am, and I do know where I'm headed. And so I can look forward and say, okay, like, what would that level of Michelle look like? What choice would she make in this situation? And it really, really helps to align my actions today with my goals for my future. So I hope that really helps. I hope it really clears up the act as if sort of philosophy, because I don't want anybody to get into a bunch of debt. One of our Women Who Wow members asked me, hey, here's the deal. Do you think I should get into debt to do XYZ for my business? I'm like, absolutely not, right? It's like, you don't want to, not that I agree or abided by this philosophy in my marriage, but you don't want to shackle a new marriage with a new baby right away. You don't want to shackle a new business with a bunch of debt. And so you really don't want, I don't think that's very wise. And so even though maybe the next level of her might have said, yeah, I want coaching, I had to say, listen, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't put that burden on my business. And so the acting as if you're pretending and lying to people, or if you're making unwise financial decisions, writing a what's the phrase? Writing a check that your butt can't cash. Then that's not really wise. But if you use it to align your today actions with your tomorrow goals, then it's going to serve you well every time. So appreciate you guys being with me, and I look forward to another live stream. If you would like to know more about Women Who Wow membership, we are the place where seriously driven women entrepreneurs go to grow wild success on their own terms. I would love to have you join us. Just PM me here on Facebook, and or go check us out at bmichellepippin.com/Women Who Wow. Talk to you soon. Bye.